Animations are quite popular nowadays in web design, mainly in using CSS and JavaScript. Done right, it can give your site that wow factor that can excite your users. These are just some examples of big companies using animation to create that excitement. Notice that they're using JavaScript and CSS, and notice how smooth and aesthetic these animations are. So in this tutorial, you're going to be learning how to create a login register form as shown here. And you can see we've got some animation, smooth animation going on. It slides in and out as you click on the login and register buttons, and you've got this nice little border thing animated as well. So, and you're gonna also learn how to create this gradient effect with an aesthetic sort of background and transparency thing going on here. So you're going to be learning quite a few things as well as the animation, some graphical stuff as well. Okay, so let's get started with the project. For this project, I'm going to be using Visual Code to do our coding. Now, first of all, I'm going to create a folder on the desktop called Login Register. Then I'm going to go into Visual Code, then open folder. And within there, I'm going to go to the desktop and open the folder that I just created. So remember, it's open folder. So then, once that's opened, then I'm going to create index.html within that folder. And this is going to hold our markup, the HTML markup, that is. Then I'm going to create a main.css file to hold our CSS styling. Then within the index.html, I just create a standard HTML starter code. And within VS Code, you can just do exclamation mark, then tab. Then I just edit the title, and that should get you started. Okay, now that we have our standard HTML markup set up, what we can do now is, okay, we also need to link the CSS. So it's link CSS, and it's going to link the main.css. That's what we call it here, main.css. Okay, so now we're going to set up the layout. Okay, so first we're going to have a div container. This is going to be the main container to hold application. Okay, so then within that we're going to have a wrapper, which is a div dot, and we should call it a login register. Okay, then within that we shall have two child divs, and one would be to hold the nav buttons and the other would be to hold the forms. Okay, so div dot nav buttons. Within there we'll have two buttons, so button with ID login button, and then we're going to have another button with ID, and it's register button. Okay, then we're going to have the wrapper for the forms. Okay, so it's going to be div dot form group. We'll call it form group. Okay, within there we're going to have two forms. Okay, form with ID, login form, login form. Then we're going to have another form which is register form, register form, and that should be it. Okay, so if that should give me a container with a login register wrapper. Within there I've got these two button nav buttons there, which is nav button, which is okay. So I've got two buttons there. Let me just get that. So I've got two buttons there under the navigation. Just put that there. Okay, and then so I've got a navigation there. Then I've got the two forms there. Then I also need a footer which should hold a link to forgot password. So that will have a link and it will have forgot password, so that okay, so there you go. So this will be our layout. Now we need to set up the CSS. Okay, so first of all I'm gonna need to set up the reset styles. So these are the initial reset styles that I'm going to be using for this project. So I've got box sizing to border box using open sans, margin padding 0, color inherit and background color inherit. I've set this border to PX orange. This is just to give us a guide on if we get any issues of any abnormal visual defects. We will know with this border. So that's why we have at that. Okay, so for this project we're going to be needing a picture of a jellyfish. We're going to go to a site called pexels.com and we're going to do a search on jellyfish. Once we've got our results, we're going to look down the list and look for a particular colorful jellyfish. And that's the one that we're going to be using. We're going to download this and we're going to rename it as pic1.jpg and bring it into our folder. So as you can see, I've downloaded the image. Now we need to do the rest of the styling. Okay. So as you can see, I've set the body background image here with the image that we downloaded and set it to background cover and background position as center. So it will have the full size and centered. And also set the container to width 100% and padding to top 60 and padding bottom to 100. So we can have a quick look at that. Open the live server now. Okay. So this is the image. Because we haven't got any content and things, so we need to do other styling. then this will be centered. But this is the orange border that I was talking about earlier. So this is just a guide so for the initial stages. Okay. So here I've styled the login register wrapper. So set the height to 560 and the width to 500, and so margin left and margin right is auto, so this will center it. So gave it some padding and border radius, and gave it a box shadow. And I'm going to have the overflow. I won't have this at the moment. Later on we can do it hidden. At the moment we're going to leave it like this, but we're going to revisit this because we don't want to see when it slides out. We don't want to see it. But at the moment when we're setting it up, we want to see it just so that we know what we're doing is right. And so we're going to revisit that. So let's have a look at that now. So if I refresh, oops, I forgot to save. Okay, save. Now we'll go back, refresh. Okay, so I've got the wrapper set up, and I've got to style this part, which is the forgot password, right? So this is the wrapper, and this is centered now, so it's going in the right direction. Okay, next I'm gonna add as a linear gradient background to this login register wrapper. Okay, for this I'm going to use a site called CSSgradient.io. Okay, so this will generate a gradient. So what I've done is I've got a sort of a purple setup here and a sort of a blue, so that it matches our background image. And what this does is it produces a gradient with the purple and the blue, and and this is at the top. You see how it comes out. So we want it not from left to right, we want top to bottom. So there is an angle there that you can adjust. So I want it 180. Okay, so it's just 180. Oh, 180. Okay, so you can just type in 180. It'll be easier. Okay, so once you got the colors set up, then it will produce the code here. Now you can copy this code. It's the bottom one that you need to copy. So copy, and I'll just put it into there. Now, and I'll save. Now if I view my, so we've got a gradient set up, and it goes from top to bottom. Okay, now I can also have a transparency to it. Now the way to do that is, so if I do add another color, okay, so it's added another color here, so I need to make it white. Okay, so then choosing this color, I can give it a transparency. Okay, so it's given a transparency for this white. So then you can adjust this so that it gives you a sort of an effect. So depending on what type of effect you want. So I want it all the way here. Here. Okay, so So I'm going to set all this. Okay, so if I copy that and take it to my style sheet and paste it in there and save it. Now if I go back into there, okay, now you see that I have a sort of a transparency to it as well, so that's pretty cool. So if I go back, okay, I'm going to also add, I'm going to set the color of the text to white color. So now I've added the styling for the nav buttons. So the nav buttons wrapper, you will have width as 100% and height 100 pixels, and padding and opacity and some margin at the bottom. The button has, the font size. I've given it a font size of 1.5 and giving it some margin right. Okay, so this is the wrapper and this is the actual button, what we're looking at here. So not going to have any border to it, and the cursor is pointer. And when it's focused, I'm going to have it, I'm not going to show the outline, so that sometimes, when it's focused, it draws a border around it. We don't want that. And when it's active, I'm going to have that a border with a padding 10px. So this is going to be animated. So that's what we'll do later. But so when it's set as active, it will have this border at the bottom. So, and it will give the effect that it's animated. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the site now. Okay, so right, we don't have any text there at the moment for the button, so we can do that now. Okay, so if I go back and add in the text, so that will be login, and that will be register. If I save that and go back, okay, so I've got my login and I've got my register. Alright, so if I go back now, what we need to do now is we're going to add the forgot part. That's this section. We're going to do that section now. Okay, so that's the section for the forgot section. Okay, so it's we've given it a relative position. That's because we're going to, that's quite important because we're going to animate the position of it. So given the height, margin left to right, auto, so it centers, text line center. So giving it margin top minus 300. Okay, so we have a look at that. I think I've given this an ID here, so I've started as an ID. So in the markup, given it as a class, so I need to change that as an ID. And also, I think, and also this is in the wrong place. I put it in the wrong place, so I need to move this up to within the wrapper. So that's, need to copy that into there. Okay, so now if I look back into it, should have a border there as well. Okay, so yeah, so now it's placed it inside there. And also I don't think I need to put. I think I've commented out this margin. I think that's later on. I need that later on. So okay, so it's got a border top, which is, if I go back, can't see it at the moment. I think okay, so it should be there. All right. Okay. Okay, now so we need to add in the form elements now. So we're going back into the index.html and we're gonna put in the fields, form fields for the login. Okay, so first we're gonna have a label, and it's gonna be for a username. And the text we're gonna have is username. Then we're going to have the input field with ID and username, and then we have another label, and this is going to be for password. Text as password, and a tab. Then we're going to have the input field for password, and the ID is password. Okay, next we're going to have a submit button, input, submit, and it's got an ID of submit as well, submit. And then that should be okay. Right, so if I save that and have a look at it, okay, so it's got the username, password, and the fields. They're not formatted. Okay, so that is probably the submit button. So just need to go back into this, submit. So the value is submit. So go back in. So yeah, so I've got the username, password, and submit. Okay, so we got all that set up. So I've got the styling for the form here. So this is the input fields. So I've given it a width of 100% and a height and some padding, taken away the border and given it a border radius of 5 pixels, and giving it a margin bottom, and I've given it a transparent background, so it's an RGBA value, so it's got a transparency or opacity of 0.2. So if I go look at that, okay, I can, there you go. So these orange boxes, these orange borders, we're going to take them out. So these boxes have sort of a transparency to it, so you can sort of see through it. So it's coming on fine. Go back. So this is the styling for the submit button. So I've given it a font weight of 700, so it's giving it a bit more, the text is more bolder. Also applied this text transform to uppercase, giving it font of 1 EM, and align the text to center, and giving it a color white, padding with sort of top and bottom, that's 8 pixels at the top, and on the sides 0 pixels. I've given you 100% width, and giving you height 35 pixels. I've taken away the border, giving you a border radius of 20 pixels, giving you a margin top, and also giving you a background color of blue. Okay, so if I save that and look at that, okay, so as you can see there, it's more rounded, and it's got the text transformed to uppercase. So we need to go back and add the form for the registration. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a label, and it's going to be for name equals full name, and the text is going to be full name tab. Okay, then I'm going to have an input, which is going to be with ID full name. Then we're going to have another label, and this is going to be for equals, it's going to be the email, and just call it email. And the input for the email with the ID email, and then now we need the password. We need 2 passwords for the password and confirm password. So it's going to be label for, it's going to be for equals password, it's going to be input and password, and then we're going to have another label, say for, and it's going to be confirm password. Okay, so confirm password, password, then we're going to have the input with ID password. So let's take a look at that now. Save it, and let's. Okay, so we've got 2 forms here now. So we've got the full name, email, password, confirm password, and we also need a submit button. Okay, so it's going to be input type is import, and it's going to be pass is submit. Okay, so we'll save that. That should give us the button as well. Okay, something's not right there. So I've got import, and we just need to copy that. And just copy that. Okay. So it's submit. Okay, so that I'll save that. Okay, so I've got two forms with two submits, and we've got the sort of the footer there. Forgot password. Okay, so now we need to move this to this area so we can slide it left and right. So this is all stacked at the moment, so we need to give it a position, move it to the right. Okay, so I've given the positioning values for the forms and the footer part where you got the for link. Right, so I've given it a position of relative, and given the login form with 0 pixels from the left, and the registration form is 500 pixels from the left, and I've given it, moved it up minus 230. So if I save that and have a look at it, okay, so that's so it was there before, now it's moved to there. So we need to do we need to move that part up as well. So let me just see. So I'm going to go back up and remove the comments from there. So that will push it up, push the forget up. Okay, so then we also need to get rid of the guides. We don't need that anymore. So I can save, and that should. So it's looking better now. So we've got the forms, but these buttons don't do anything at the moment. So next part is going to be to activate the sliding functionality with adding some JavaScript to it. So when you click on login, it will show the login screen. You press click on register, it will slide the registration form to the left. Okay, so to add the JavaScript, we need to go back into the index.html, and the way to add a JavaScript is to add it to the bottom, so that it runs after everything else is loaded into the browser. So in your markup, you'll have the body and all its elements. Then it will load the JavaScript. This is so that sometimes when you load the JavaScript at the beginning, it would the JavaScript would look for things in the markup, but the markup hasn't been loaded yet. So your JavaScript will fail to run properly. So when you're manipulating the HTML markup document elements, it's best to put it at the bottom. So I'll go down just before the body. I'm going to put a script tag. Okay, that's all you need to do. All right. From here now, we need to grab a hold of all the things that we're going to manipulate with JavaScript. So all the things that are going to be animated or clicked on, we need to grab the ID of these elements. So if I just highlight the, let's see, we're going to have the buttons. Okay, we're going to be using the buttons. So the button ID, we're going to copy the button ID. We're going to copy the registration button ID, and we're going to animate the form. So we're going to grab the IDs of the form. So we've got the login form. Okay, and we got the registration form. Okay, and we also gonna animate the footer forgot panel. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to manipulate with the JavaScript. So in VS Code, you can Alt copy, select and copy all of these, or you can individually copy it. So now I'm going to go back into our script and just paste it in here. Okay, so all right. So we have the proper names for these IDs. A lot of times, you know, when you type the IDs, you tend to make typing errors. So we're not gonna make any errors here. So for each one of these IDs that we've selected, we're going to create a variable, okay? And the variable, we're going to call it the same name as the ID, and it's going to equal the element of what we're trying to grab. So the login button, we're going to grab the button with the ID login button. So to do that, we are going to document, I'm going to say document get by ID, and we're going to select the same ID. So same as the variable name, we're going to put it in there. So it's going to grab that button. So because it's got the same ID. All right, so we're going to do the same with registration. And document dot get by ID, and we're just going to copy that. And remember, we're putting inverted commas. If you miss that, you're going to get problems. Okay, so remember that. We've got our login form, so we're going to get the form now, and it's document dot get ID, and it's going to be the name is going to be the ID is login form. So it's inverted commas and login form. Okay, same with this. So we save that. Okay, so we've got all the IDs. Now we can manipulate these elements in our JavaScript. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to set a click event for the buttons. So if I click on login button, I want it to do something, and if I click on the registration button, I want it to do something. So we go back to our login form. So these two buttons are clickable, and I want something to happen when I click on. Okay, to add the click event, what we can do is we're going to first add the click event to the registration button. Okay, so I'll copy the registration button. I think, alright, before I do that, I think I've spotted a mistake, because in the registration button, I've got an extra space there. So that will cause problems. So I need to make sure there's no extra spaces there. So just deleted that space there. Okay, so just want to make sure everything else is okay. Alright, seems okay. Alright, so I've copied the registration button variable, and I'll say on click equals, okay, and we're going to say we want it to run a function with open close brackets and then curly brackets. Okay, now within there we're just going to have an alert saying that registration button click. Okay, so this should test out the functionality. When I click on the registration button, it should display this alert. Right, so if I go there, just refresh and click on register. Okay, registration button click. Okay, so that's working. Right, so and we need to do the same for the login button as well. So copy the login button and copy, and same thing. I'm going to say on click equals, I want it to run a function, open close brackets and curly brackets, and then I'm going to say alert, and we're going to say login button clicked. So now if I go back and do a refresh, okay, so if I click on registration, it says registration button click, login, and I get login button clicked. So okay, so we need to go back. So we created the click events. Okay, so for the time being, we just alerting a basic message. Okay, so what we need to try and do now is we need to make the panels move from left to right. So if I go back, so currently when I click on register, I want this form to move over to the left, and I want this form to move over to the left. So if I go into the inspect, okay, so I'm looking at the login form group. Okay, so this is looking at the login form, right? So if I look at the positioning of the login form, okay, it's left 0, right? So it's from the left side, it's moved 0 pixels, right? Now if I look at the registration form, and the left value is 500, so what that means is from the left side I move 500 to the right. Okay, so when I click on the register, I want the left position for this form to be 0 because that's the value for this. So that's the, so from the left side I want it to be 0. So what I need to do is I need to make that the left position for that 0. So if I can highlight that, so I've selected registration form, and I'm going to change the left value to 0. So now it's moved to the left and it's overlapping the login form. So this is what I need to do. And if I go back, so I need to say I need the registration form. Okay, copy. And I need to say the style. Okay. Dot left equals, and on it 0 pixels. Okay, so that should, when I click on it, it should move it to the left. Okay, so if I refresh and I click on that, okay, I've got that message. So that's moved it. Okay, now the problem is we need the login form. We need that to move towards the left 500. So to move it to the left side, we need to say move it away from the wrapper's left side towards the left. So we need to say, we need to give it a minus number, minus 500. Oops, 500. So that's the value we need to give it to make the login form move to the left. Okay, so if we go back and I say, I'll copy the login form variable and say copy, and say dot style dot left equals minus 500 pixels, and I'll save that. So refresh. So if I click on register now, okay, I get that mess, I can remove that. So I've got the registration button, registration form in the place where the login form was, and the login form has moved towards the left, minus 500. Okay, now we also need to set the register as active, because currently the login button is active because it's got the underline border. So we need to move the underline border to the registration, and also we got the footer, the forgot panel. We need to move that to the left as well. So they're the next things that we need to do. to go back, and we say we move the forgot. Okay, forgot. Okay, dot style dot left equals, we want it to -500 pixels, and that should do it. Go back, refresh. So now we should, when we click on register, we should see the logins form and the panel move to the left. Oh, it doesn't. Okay. So it's forgot document, forgot. Just see that again. So forgot. Position. So it doesn't added the forgot. Okay, I didn't save it, so I'll just do save and go back. Right, refresh. So now we should see the form, the login form, and the panel move left. Okay, so there you go, and it's moved. Right. So the next thing, we need to set the border of the active button. So to add the class active to the registration button, so we need to first add the active class to it. So the way to do that is you grab the variable, the registration button variable, and we say we want the class list, okay, and we want it to add a class, okay, to the class list. Okay, so the name of the class is active. Right. So if I test that out, refresh. So if I do that, okay, so it's added the class because we know it's got the underline. So if I go back into the button in our debugger, and I click on the button, it's got a class as active. Now the login is also active, so we need to remove the active class from the login now. So go back, and I do the same thing for the login button. So grab the variable for the login button, and I say login button class list dot remove. We're going to remove the active class. So save that. Okay, so I'm gonna add active to registration button, but I'm gonna remove it from the login button. So go there, and if I click on register, okay, so it's removed it from there and it's added it there. Okay, so then I'll just remove the alert. Next, we're gonna do the same thing for the login button. So go back. Now we want it to move back to its original position. So currently the login button is login form is the position is -500. You see it, -500. So we needed to go back to 0. So when we click on login again now, we needed to move back to 0. We need the forgot panel is that one. We need to move that to 0 as well. Okay, so we're going to do the reverse now. So when we click on login, we need it to reverse back to what it was. So we're going to work on the login button click now. So I'm just going to remove that. So it's going to be the same. So login form, and we're going to say style. Oops. Login form dot style, and we want the left value to equal when it's 0 pixels, right? So we want the forgot panel and the style dot left equals 0 pixels, and we want the registration form to go back to 500. Registration form, the style equals 500, because remember we're going towards the right 500 pixels, so it's a positive number. If we're going to the left, it's going to be a minus. So we're moving registration to the right 500 pixels. Okay, so if I do that, and also we need to do the reverse in the class list of adding the active and removing the active. So we need, currently the active is in register, so I need to remove from the register and add it to the login. So it's the reverse. So we need to grab the login button. Okay. And we're going to say class list, and we're going to say add, and open brackets, and I'm going to say active. Now we want to remove it from the registration button. Now registration button dot class list dot remove, and we want to remove the active class, active. So I'll save that and go back, refresh. Now if I click on there, the login form goes to the left and the registration button becomes active. If I click on login again, the login becomes active, and you see the login form, and the registration form is towards the right. Now the next thing is we don't want to see this. We want it to we want it to be hidden. So the way we do that is adding an opacity of 0 to it, and so that if we go there. Okay, before we add the opacity, what we need to do is we can animate the sliding, give it the sliding effect. So currently, if I go back, if I click on it, it just sort of jumps. You see, it's just jumping. We need it to animate now. We're Okay, so that's what we'll do now. So if I go into main.css, and we need to give this a animation property. So it's the animation property is, okay, it's a transition. Transition, and we need I think we're going to specify all. Okay, all means so whatever properties you're changing, you will animate. There are certain things that it doesn't animate. What it does animate is, like, if you change the width from 10 to 100, then it will animate that. Instead of jumping, it will animate step by step, small increments, and so it gives the illusion that we're animating things. So when I say all, it means all the properties for form and for what. Okay, so I mean you can just say animate the left property, or animate opacity. Okay, you can, that's perfectly normal as well. So, but in this case we're just going to say all, make it simple. And the next attribute that we're going to give is the amount of time. Okay, so we're going to say 0.5 seconds. Okay, and then you can give it a type of animation, which is like there's certain things that you can make it smooth and more jumpy, and there's different effects, like but we're just going to do ease to make it simple. There's quite a lot of effects, like cubic. There are these different types, cubic brushes. They have it. They have a different type of effect where you can like have the effect of like springing up and down, or accelerating at the start and slowing down at the end, and things like that. So we're just going to make it simple at the moment. So it's going to be ease. Okay, so this is all we need to animate. So if we change something from value A to value B, it will animate it. So if I go back to refresh, see the smoothness. So that's all you need to animate. So when you change things in JavaScript from one value to the other, instead of for it to jump, now it's going to animate. So we'll go back. Now we've animated this, but we can also animate the active border, the bottom border, because it's actually, there's a margin there as well, so you can give it the effect of like it's dropping down. So it's easy to do that. If I go back into main, right now, the active element is the button. So it's the button class. It's the login and the registration. So it's that and that. Just so it's the login and registration BTN. So if I go back into there and I say, oops, oh, I didn't copy it. Copy. So that's a class, so I'm just putting a dot there. Make sure, oops, not dot, not class, it's ID. So ID. So what we're doing is we're styling the login BT and BTN, I think that is. Login BTN and registration BTN. Okay, so make sure you got the proper IDs, just double check again. Yep, login BTN and registration BTN. Sometimes when I copy it, you know, you miss letters, so okay, so just be aware of that. So it's the ID that we're going to target, and it's the same thing, we're just going to copy that onto there. Okay, so now if I go back, now we need to have a look at the border. You see it drop down gracefully rather than jumping. So everything is smooth now. Okay, the next thing, when we got the login in view, we don't want to see that. When we got the registration in view, we don't want to see the login form. So the way we do that is just change the opacity to 0, and the opacity to this is 1. So alternating the opacity from 0 to 1, you know, you can make it visible and not visible. Right, so this needs to be done in JavaScript. So first we'll concentrate on the register button. So when you click on the register button, we want the not there. We want the registration screen, registration form, the style. We want dot opacity equals. So we want to see it, so put a 1 there, right? And but we want to hide the login form, so it's login form dot style dot opacity equals 0. And same for the forgot dot style dot opacity equals 0. Okay, so if I go back, refresh, so it's disappeared. So yeah, so if I refresh, so we just done one part of it, so we made it disappear. So when we click on this, we need to make it appear. But also, when we need to initially set this as hidden, opacity 0. So so to do that, okay, so the registration is opacity is 1. So we need to go back into the style sheet and set the initial opacity to 0 for the registration form, login register. Okay, so we need login form. Login register. So form registration is here. Okay, so we need to say opacity 0. Okay, so when you load it for the first time, it's gonna be hidden. So it's hidden now. Okay, so now if I click on that, it appears, right? So the registration form disappears and appears. Okay, so now we need to consider the other scenario, right? When we click the button, login button, we need to change the opacity of the login form to 1. Okay, so the login form, so login form dot style dot opacity equals 1. We want it to appear, and also forgot dot style dot opacity equals 1, and we need to hide the registration. Dot style dot opacity equals 0. So we'll go back, refresh, and click on register. It appears. So everything is disappearing as appearing and disappearing. So okay, the last thing that we need to do is make the overflow area of this wrapper hidden, so that at the moment you can see it a little bit on, you know, the parts of the form when it slides out. So we don't want that. We just want to see it disappear on the edges. So if I go back and go back to the login register wrapper, which is there. So just initially I given overflow is hidden, but I commented it out. So if I do that now, if I go back and refresh, okay, so the the form sort of disappears after the edges, rather than you see bits here. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. You can try out different backgrounds and different gradients, and you know, to give it a different look and feel, and just be creative with this technique. Okay, so hope you enjoyed it once again, and see you again.